This is a presentation to cover the basics of hypervisors to answer some questions that commonly occur in the Hyper-V forums. Take some time, listen to this. I hope I've covered just the basic concepts, and that's really all I'm trying to relate is just the basic concepts so you can begin to move forward with your troubleshooting in your environment, and then we'll move on to more complex scenarios. Now the hypervisors, we've got many different types that we're looking at. There's ESX, there's Hyper-V, and there's XenServer. Their models are a little different. So we'll start with the basics here. First we start with our piece of hardware, our server. As you can see here, I've got a basic server. I've got some network cards, I've got a video card, I've got a processor. Processors don't matter anymore. It's no longer an issue of sockets, it's an issue of cores. Now right now we don't have any storage, so let's add some storage. We're going to add some local storage into our host. We're going to add a storage disk array into our host. Okay, these are just physical attachments at this point in time. We're not doing anything with it. Now, the first thing that happens when we install a hypervisor is a hypervisor layer. This is our physical layer down here. This is all of our physical hardware. But a hypervisor layer gets layered on top of all of that physical hardware. This is what our hypervisor is right here. This is our hypervisor layer. And our hypervisor layer serves to present our physical devices up into our virtual devices. Now we're up in our virtual device layer, but we're missing something at this point in time. Our hypervisor layer needs some sort of controller, some sort of monitor, and that's where our parent volume comes into play. And in some cases this is called the control domain, this can be called the parent partition, this can be called DOM0. There's a number of different names for this, but as you can see, he nestles down into the hypervisor. He is a type of virtual machine. He's not a virtual machine that we run and manage, but he is similar to a virtual machine in that he sits on top of the hypervisor, but he has control of all the hardware underneath the hypervisor. He's the one that controls the hardware, controls the virtual machines, makes and manages, destroys, connects all the bits together. He controls this whole hypervisor layer that's down here below him. So he sits in a special place. When you look at the physical console of a hypervisor, this is the guy that you're logged into that's there. So if this is a XenServer, it looks Linux-like. If it's an ESX server, it looks Linux-like. If this is a Hyper-V server, or a Server 2008 server, and you've added the Hyper-V role, this is still the model you're dealing with. But when you log into that console, it looks like a Server 2008 installation. Now there's some additional things that happen here as well. So we've got everything and we've presented, and now we can get down to the business of just creating virtual machines. And the virtual machines sit and run, and they can be of different sizes, and they're just addressed in different locations. This parent partition controls these virtual machines. Each one of these is an individual operating system. Each one of these thinks it has storage of its own. Okay. It thinks it has memory of its own. It thinks it has a virtual network card. It just, as far as it's concerned, it's no different than if you installed it on the desktop inside, your office or at home or something like that. The operating system inside here stands by itself. Now when we start connecting things together, that's when we start adding our virtual switches, our virtual networks. Okay, a virtual network or virtual switch or a network interface, whatever you want to call it, it's the same thing. And once again, we sit up on this layer. Okay, we sit up above the hypervisor. But somehow we have to link things together. So if he's an internal switch, he sits here and the VMs can use him, the parent partition could even attach to him. If he needs to talk to the outside world, he needs to be jacked into one of these physical networks down here, and these physical network interfaces just become an extension of him. So this physical port here becomes this external port here, and then you patch that into your enterprise. At the same time, we can just create additional connections. We could connect one here and connect one to this virtual machine, or this virtual machine, or even to the parent partition. So we can make those connections.